Hey everybody, Stinger here with a special message, a special thank you to the best Italian wrestling podcast. That's right, the best Italian wrestling podcast called Pro Wrestling Culture. Specifically, thank you to Aldo Fiadoni, all right? Aldo, awesome job, man. I guess you and I met in New York in 2019. And there were some tears shed there. Man, I love that. I love that. You know what? Real men can cry, bro. Let me tell you something. Man, means a lot that you watch. Means a lot that this podcast is happening. And the pro wrestling culture appreciates Aldo Fiadoni. So be watching there. It's going to be showtime. And tune in to the podcast, Pro Wrestling Culture, because it's always showtime there from the Stinger.
Questo programma non è soggetto a infezioni. It's showtime.
Okay, welcome ladies and gentlemen in a new brand episode of Pro Wrestling Culture. My name is the real Messiah, Aldo Fiadone, and here with me, our special guest, JJ Gale. Hi JJ, how are you doing?
Yeah, really good, thanks. Yeah, pleasure to be on the show. Looking forward to it.
Thank you very much for coming here on PWC. So, let's start this interview with a classic question. How do you start this business, and who is your first inspiration for your career?
Yeah, well, like a lot of us, I grew up watching wrestling. It was always something that I was drawn to. I've never been able to put my finger on why exactly. I think it's just a perfect blend for me of sort of performance, sort of extravagant, big characters, bright lights. There's that athleticism, that physical nature, the grit of it. I think growing up as a young boy watching that, it was just something about it just exploded onto the screen. I've got a bit of a funny story of my first experience of wrestling, which I remember vividly. Hadn't really heard of it, had no idea what wrestling was. And then I'm just flipping through the channels. I'm probably about 6-7 years old. I'm sitting on the sofa with my brother. We're flipping through Sky Sports, which is what we had WWE on at the time. There's football, there's whatever else. And then all of a sudden it goes on to an episode of WWE SmackDown. And it's the Boogeyman. And he's chasing, I think, maybe JBL, Booker T, someone like that. I don't remember. I want to say JBL, but I might be making that up. I might be fabricating that. And he's chasing him around with these worms hanging out his mouth. And this is my first introduction to wrestling. It's not, John Cena. It's not a match. It's just the Boogeyman chasing JBL around. So that was the first thing that made me think, hey, what the hell am I watching? What is this? And my brother, he skips the channel. And I'm like, whoa, no, put it back. I want to see more of that. So we put it back on, and then I don't remember what else happens. It's that first vivid memory of him sort of chasing him around the ring, these worms coming out of his mouth. And I was like, what the hell was that? We watched a little bit, and he was trying to be a protective older brother at the time, and being like, oh, you're too young for this. I think he was aware of what it was. He was like, oh, you're too young to watch this. You need to wait, grow up a little bit. Then whenever I could, I'd get on the TV and find out whenever the WWE was on and watch it and get acclimatized to these characters and the world of wrestling, and it just went on and on from there. So yeah, that was kind of my first introduction to wrestling, and like a lot of us, just became obsessed with it, watching it every week. First inspiration, I mean, I think apart from just the whole thing as a whole pulling me in. I guess my first guy was had to be John Cena. You know, he was at the top of his game at that point. You know, when I started watching age 7 it was about 2006. And that's sort of the start of the rise of the John Cena era, I guess. So as a young kid, like, he was everything, you know, the coolest thing you wanted to be. So yeah, I'd say he was probably the first inspiration, although along the way, you know, there was a lot of other people that inspired me all the way up to this day.
John was the icon of the ruthless and aggression era. And I think probably you are one of the wrestlers that can be an icon of the ruthless and aggression in RevPro, because you are a full-time wrestler for Revolution Pro Wrestling, a company that made many awesome shows. I was there many times during the Global Wars tour with the Ring of Honor and New Japan in the York Hall, the beautiful York Hall. So, what do you think about the Revolution Pro Wrestling, the status of RevPro in this very moment, after the pandemic era, after the every change in wrestling business in Europe, in particular in England, because many companies like Progress, Insane Championship Wrestling, close their doors to the WWE because their contracts with the WWE are finished, and everything changed.
Yeah, I think personally, in my opinion, I think Revolution Pro Wrestling, RevPro, it's the top of the European wrestling scene. I think that's kind of the top level you want to be at. Like you say, you're cool. I mean, you ask any independent wrestler if you want to be on an independent wrestling show in Europe, you want to be at You're Cool. Don't get me wrong, there's loads of other cool venues, there's loads of other great promotions that I'd love to get to as well, but for me, RevPro is the top of the list. You know, I've been at RevPro on nights at You're Cool where the atmosphere is unreal. You know, you don't beat that You're Cool crowd. You know, there's been so many special moments, and I'm looking forward to making my own special moment there. I'm sure we'll get on to whatever goals I've got going forward, but to get in You're Cool and get in that ring and create a You're Cool moment for myself is definitely the top of the list. In terms of where RevPro are right now, I think from the pandemic onwards, I think they've shown a lot of commitment to the wrestlers and the fans. No one could have expected COVID-19 to come along and do what it did. And when it did, it kind of rocked the independent wrestling world, because we rely on live events, ticket sales, and the support of all the fans. And they're amazing fans, the most passionate fans, and they allow us to, as professional wrestlers, as independent wrestlers, apply our trade, learn our skills, and, you know, get out there as independent wrestlers and grow our brand and get better wrestlers to take the independent wrestling to the next level. Yeah. And for promoters and promotions, it allows them to make money and facilitate these spaces for us. The pandemic came along and shut all of that off. You know, nothing could happen due to restrictions with the British government, which is completely understandable. But I think we all kind of thought, what do we do now? It was really weird for a lot of wrestlers. For myself, it was when I was just starting to break out on the scene, I believe. And coming to the end of my education and looking to throw myself headfirst into independent wrestling scene. For a lot of the other guys, they've been doing that every weekend for a long time, and they were just getting to the top, and it all stopped. Everything stopped. But RevPro were great at continuing in whatever way we could. So we had the empty arena tapings. I'm not sure if you caught any of them initially out on Fight TV, and then eventually went out for free on Twitch, YouTube, RevPro on demand. 100%. And that obviously gave the fans some independent wrestling, because although you had your WWE and your other big promotions still putting content out there, that content from the indies completely stopped because nothing was being created. But we were able to give fans an insight to see some of their favorite independent wrestlers. But more importantly, I think give the boys a chance to just get in there and do what we do. Do you know what I mean? It's not the same without the fans there. It's not the same as traveling the country, but we got in the ring and we got to all get back together and do what we do best, which is put on some great professional wrestling.
So RevPro creating stars during their time, and one of these probably was Ryan Smile, a new this person, one of the most beautiful person in wrestling business that I knew as a fan. Rest in peace, Ryan. And I think right now, Revolution Pro Wrestling creating again new shining stars like you, like Luke Jacobs, and many more. So I'm very proud for this conversation, and I'm very proud to see a talent like you in the ring in Revolution Pro Wrestling, because just like I said before, they made many shows with the opportunity to see Hiroshi Tanahashi, Kazuchika Okada, AJ Styles during the process, and that was awesome, sincerely. So, do you have one favorite opponent in RevPro right now?
Someone that I have wrestled, or someone that I want to wrestle, or both?
Wrestler, and I want both.
Okay,
if it's possible.
Sure. I mean, I've had some great matches that mean a lot to me. I can't not say Will Ospreay. I was real lucky. I mean, we talk about that pandemic. I mean, the last thing I expected at those empty arena tapings was to be wrestling Will Ospreay. I mean, in my opinion, the best wrestler in the world. I get to see him up close at RevPro do what he does best, and obviously on the larger scale at New Japan and across the world. You know, a locker room leader, a stand-up good dude, always looking to improve the British scene and everyone in the locker room. You know, he's there to grow the scene, to grow, to help us grow as wrestlers. So I've got a lot of respect for him, and to be able to get in the ring with him. And, you know, it was the last thing I expected. Like I said, you know, a few things changed around, and before I know it, I'm stepping in there with him. I'd love to run that back again. I mean, this was going back 2 years now, going on 3 years this summer since that match happened. And I feel like I've grown leaps and bounds since then. I've really started to come into my own. There's a long way to go, but I feel like I'm 3 times the wrestler I was back then. So I'd love to run that match back. I know at the moment he's thrown out the open challenge to everyone. You know, he's not going for a championship at the moment. He just wants to see who wants to step up. And I definitely want to step up. That time will come. I'll bide my time for the right opportunity when I think it's right, and I'll lay down the challenge. But that was a very special match. Been in there with who I think is the best in the world, and learning from him, and just being able to prove that I can hang and, you know, hold my own in there. It was a real test for me personally. And I'd like to think that I showed that I can. I'm nowhere near his level yet. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to say that, but I proved that I can get in there and hold my own with him. And I want to prove that I can do that again. Other matches, I had a match with Michael Oku this year, which I really enjoyed. Once again, another hell of a talent. He's done some really amazing things in RevPro. We wrestled in Portsmouth back in October. Really enjoyed that match. I felt like he brought the best out of me, and vice versa. So that was a real special match. There's been loads of great ones though. I enjoy wrestling Robbie X. Leon Slater is someone who's burst on the scene in the last sort of year, really. He's been plying his trade for ages.
The winner of Super J Cup, Robbie X.
Yes, absolutely, the British J Cup. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And he, another hell of a talent. And it's just getting in there with these guys, and we bring the best out of each other. And just, I think we've all got the same motive. We want to go out there and just put on the best match we possibly can. We want the fans to be walking out talking about us and that match. So yeah, there are a few of my favorite matches that have gone down.
So you in your curriculum, you have an experience here in Italy for the squash jobber, and so my question is simple: what do you think about the Italian fans and the moment in Italy right now for wrestling business? Because probably we started 20 years ago with Italian Championship Wrestling, and right now with companies like Squash Jobber, Black Pro Wrestling, Italian Wrestling Association, or Rising Sun Wrestling Promotion, we improved day by day. And right now, I think the Italian wrestling is in good hands in this moment. And in fact, we have Francesco Akira, one of the IWGP Junior Tag Team champions. So what do you think about just like I said before, the Italian fans, the Italian wrestling, professional wrestling, and about Francesco Akira.
Yeah. Well, I first went out to Italy last year, February last year. I went out for Dream Wrestling, Dream Pro Wrestling.
Okay, yeah, Dream Wrestling.
I believe they've only ran the one show in Italy. I know they went out to Japan and sort of co-promoted a show out in Japan as well. That was my first taste of Italian pro wrestling. I know that was the first time I had the show down in Nola in Naples, and I mean that was an incredible experience. I mean the venue we wrestled in was beautiful. It was a kind of a big sort of theatre space. So that looked really grand, and the fans were brilliant that night. They were really up for it. I wasn't sure what to expect, having not come to Italy before. You know what sort of fans you'd get, but you could tell they were wrestling fans, and they were excited to see some great action. And then like you say, coming back in October last year for SAJ Squash Jobber. And once again, the fans there were electric. They love to see their wrestling. I guess I want to say you don't get as much wrestling as here in the UK. I think we're quite spoiled with the amount of independent wrestling there is. Most weekends you'll be able to go somewhere in the country and find a show. But it definitely seems like the Italian scene's growing. But you definitely sense that appreciation from the fans that they're excited to see the wrestling. They're excited to see some guys come over from the UK, and it just makes it a joy to perform. You know what I mean? Because they're so hot from the off that we just know we're going to be in for a great night. We're going to give everything we can in the ring, and I feel like they're just giving that energy back to us. So I love the Italian fans. I'm going to be back in about a month's time. March 4th, I want to say. For
March 4th, yes. In Milan. Yes.
That's right. Yeah. For SAJ Wrestling. So really looking forward to that. Going to be back for that, and hopefully again later on this year. So yeah, I'd like to get out as much as possible and experience those fans. And as for the scene itself, I'm not well versed in the exact history. I was chatting to some guys when I was down in October about the sort of the history of the scene and sort of where the different promotions stand and when they've came in. But as far as I'm aware, since I went out in February, I suddenly opened my eyes to what a scene there is there. And if that has grown in the last few years, or whether that's been the case for a few years, I'm not sure. But it definitely seems like there's a solid sort of base growing there, like you said, with those companies that you mentioned. So yeah, I think the Italian scene's growing strength to strength. And it can only help to have someone like Akira, who's come out of Italy, come all around Europe, and then ultimately on to Japan, obviously all Japan and now New Japan, and just doing what he does. You know, he's an incredible talent, and he's flying the flag for Italy and doing you guys proud. And I think seeing a talent like him come out of the country is no doubt going to make the rest of Europe and the rest of the world pay attention to what's going on in Italy. And there's loads more talented guys from the 2 times I've come to visit. You know, there's guys in there like I wrestled the BBB last time I was down. Two great talents as well. Really enjoyed wrestling those guys. So yeah, there's plenty of talent to come from Italy. So I think I'm sure there's a lot of eyes on your scene.
After your words, I think we need to see JJ Gale against Francesco Akira here in Italy.
I'd love it. Let's make it happen. Put it out there. Any Italian promotions, please. Let's book it.
I want to talk about it with Enea and the SAJ. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, make it happen.
So my last question: do you have any funny stories to talk about it during your career?
Funny stories. Gosh, I'm sure there's plenty. I'm sure there's plenty. We'll see what comes to mind.
Every person crashed during after this question.
Yeah. It's picking out one individual story, isn't it? God, what have we got? I think like from a sheer just random point. I remember doing an interview a couple of years ago where this got brought up, so it always sticks in my mind of just like a strange moment in wrestling. I was wrestling for a promotion in England a few years back, right when I started, first year or so into the business. And for some reason, all of a sudden, it was a battle royal. So all the wrestlers are in the ring, and it was, like I said, it was back in about 2017. So yeah, my first year really of sort of getting out there for bookings. And there's guys like MJF was over at the time on this tour, Flip Gordon, myself, and many other sort of British guys. I don't remember exactly, but I think just to see where MJF's gone, and obviously Flip's done his own thing as well, and just to see where these guys are now kind of makes this story even more random. But we're in the ring, and just on the fly, we're told that there's going to be a dance off before the match. And none of the boys were privy to this, but you're in front of a live crowd and they've been told dance off, so all of a sudden they want to see a dance off. So we then broke into this sort of spontaneous one-to-one dance off, which I hated the idea of. I was there to wrestle, not dance, but I had in my mind I'd go for the maybe for a little spinner Rooney into a nip up. That was going to be my little signature move. And then right before me, Flip Gordon gets down, super athletic dude, does the spinner Rooney, does like the flip up into a head nip. And I'm like, well, I've got no idea what I'm going to do now. And I cannot even remember what I'm going to do. There's probably footage of this out there somewhere, but I don't want to look for it. I think I was working heel at the time, so I probably just made a fool of myself. But yeah, that was a pretty random moment. It's the first thing that comes to mind. But yeah, I'm sure there's more that will come to me as maybe this chat continues. We'll see.
Probably the Spinneroonie is the most iconic. Fantastic. So JJ, thank you very much for your time, for this conversation, for this little conversation, and I hope to see you in person. Not the for March, because I will be at work that day, but I hope to see you in the future in RevPro or here in Italy. So thank you very much for this opportunity. Sincerely.
Absolutely. Really enjoyed speaking to you. And yeah, I look forward to being out in Italy on the 4th of March and hopefully plenty more times the rest of this year. So we'll see you guys soon.
Thank you very much, JJ.
Thank you. Cheers.
Bye.